This is the Bennington Triangle, a heavily forested patch of land in southwestern Vermont, centered around the ominous peak of Glastonbury Mountain. Between 1945 and 1950, a chilling epidemic of disappearances swept through this remote region. 5 separate individuals vanished without a trace. No bodies were found, no struggling was heard, there were no clues left behind. The disappearances were already impossible enough. How does a skilled hunter vanish on his own ground? How does a young woman disappear while being watched by witnesses? But the most unsettling incident occurred when a passenger vanished while sitting inside a moving bus. He simply ceased to exist between 2 stops.
But local authorities, scrambling to find a pattern, eventually discovered one strange detail that linked all 5 cases, a common thread that seemed to defy logic and science. The mystery began in November 1945 with the disappearance of 74-year-old Mitty Rivers. Mitty was not a tourist. He was a lifelong resident and a seasoned guide who knew every route and ridge of Glastonbury Mountain. He was leading a group of 4 hunters when he decided to walk ahead of the party. He simply walked around a bend in the trail and never came back. His companions heard nothing. When they reached the spot where he should have been, the trail was empty.
Search parties scoured the mountain for days, but nothing was ever recovered. Not a boot print, not a broken branch, nothing. A year later, in December 1946, the mountain claimed its next victim, 18-year-old Paula Weldon. Paula was a sophisticated and well-liked sophomore attending Bennington College. On a Sunday afternoon, she told her roommates she was going for a long walk. She was last seen by a group of hikers on the Long Trail near the foot of Glastonbury Mountain. They watched her walk onto the trail, turn a corner approximately 100 yards ahead of them, and then she was gone. The distance was too short, the time too brief, for her to have hidden herself in the dense undergrowth. The witnesses insisted that Paula had been walking down a clear path, visible to them, and then she wasn't. The students watching her believed she had disappeared the instant she stepped out of their line of sight. The search for Paula became one of the largest and most intensive in Vermont's history, pulling in the National Guard and the FBI. Still, the only trace of her was the air where she used to be. The third case, 3 years later, is perhaps the most famous, challenging the very definition of a physical disappearance. In December 1949, James Tedford, a military traveler visiting his family, was aboard a bus traveling from St. Albans to Bennington. James was known to be fatigued and was sleeping soundly in his seat. The bus was nearly full, and at least 14 fellow riders confirmed seeing James in his seat during the long journey. As the bus approached its destination in Bennington, the driver performed a standard check of the passengers before allowing them to disembark. He noticed James's luggage still stored above the seat. He also saw a bus timetable resting neatly on the empty cushion where James had been sleeping just moments before. James Tedford, however, was gone.
He had not rung the bell to request a stop. He had not walked past the driver. There were no unauthorized stops along the route. The other passengers had been awake and alert, yet none of them had seen the man exit the moving vehicle, nor had they seen him wake up. His disappearance was immediate, impossible, and contained entirely within the moving confines of a public bus. His bags and personal effects remained, but the man himself had dissolved into the winter air before reaching his destination. This particular case baffled investigators completely. How do you search a forest for a man who didn't even make it off the asphalt?
The disappearances of James Tedford, Paula Weldon, and Mitty Rivers, alongside 2 others who vanished in the same small area, gave rise to the legend of the Bennington Triangle. Local indigenous people had refused to step foot on Glastonbury Mountain for centuries. They believed the ground was cursed, convinced the peak was a place where men would be swallowed whole by the earth or snatched by an unknown, powerful force. Modern explanations have ranged from the scientifically plausible to the utterly bizarre. Some theorized about the change in wind, noting that the sudden, dense fog and high winds that plague the mountain could disorient someone so completely they would simply wander off a cliff face, or that a shift in air pressure could affect mental stability. Others focused on clothing, noting that Paula Weldon and the final victim, Paul Jefferson, were both wearing bright red coats when they vanished, giving rise to the red coat theory, that the color attracted a hunter, or something far more ancient. But what truly links these 5 random people, the hunter, the college student, the military man, and the others?
After years of investigation, the one undeniable detail linking every person who vanished from the Bennington Triangle was not a monster, not a specific landmark, and not a bizarre change in the weather. It was the specific time of year. All 5 individuals vanished between the middle of October and the middle of December. The mountain appears to awaken and claim its victims only during the deep New England autumn, vanishing them into the cold, silent history of Vermont. The Bennington Triangle is a terrifying reminder that some mysteries have no answer. But there is another triangle, far to the south in Massachusetts, known as the Bridgewater Triangle, where the disappearances are arguably even deadlier.